this recording. All right, so good afternoon, y'all, and welcome to this webinar focused on exploring the impact of the Currency of Connection framework with the Rural-Urban Exchange. This webinar is made possible by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, so we thank them for their support. We are also very grateful to be joined by several folks who have been a part of RUX in Kentucky over the last decade, many of whom have served on the steering committee at one time or another, some of whom are in current leadership. This webinar is part of our effort to share what we've learned and our program model more broadly. We would love to see folks in every state of the country working together to bridge communities across the rural-urban continuum. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Savannah Barrett. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as the Exchange Director for Art of the Rural. Art of the Rural is a national organization that works to advance rural culture and quality of life through relationships that connect communities, cultivate dialogue, and forward rural-urban exchange. As part of that work, I co-founded the Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange back in 2014, and I'm really grateful to be able to share that work with you. Before I give you just a little bit of nuts and bolts about what RUX is and how we've developed, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. So this webinar was designed by Ivy Brashear and Richard Young. If y'all want to just say hello. They'll be your moderators and hosts today. And then we have several panelists joining us. First, we have Carmen Mitzi Sinnott coming to us from Northeastern Kentucky. We have Alexia Ault coming to us from Harlan County in Southeastern Kentucky. We've got Michael George coming from Louisville in the largest urban center in the state. And we have Amelia Martens, our program manager, who's coming to us from far Western Kentucky and Paducah. And with that, I'll just jump in and say I'd like to begin our time together by acknowledging that wherever we are, we stand on Native land. For me in Louisville, we stand on the unceded land of the Cherokee, Shawnee, Osage, and Yuki people. And we know that present-day Kentuckians represent nearly 200 tribes with origin across the United States, and that our communities include diverse Native American experiences. In RUX, we make a practice of acknowledgement because we know that our communities contain many divergent stories. And because our understanding of our places is incomplete, we work to learn from and honor all of those who have come before us to steward the places that we love. This practice of honoring those who have come before us acknowledges that our contributions are rooted in theirs and allows us to vision a more integrated path forward together. So as I mentioned, my name is Savannah, and besides being the Exchange Director for Art of the Rural, I am the mother of Sylvia, the wife of Joe, the daughter of Kim, and the granddaughter of Helen, Butch, Jim, Wilma, Sally, Dennis, and Clyde. I come from Grayson Springs, Kentucky, and live in South Louisville. And I say all of this because we know that each of you come from many places and play many roles too. So as I talk about RUX, I hope that you'll keep the people and places that you come from in mind, and let the stories that we will share about connection across rural and urban communities remind you of your own stories and your own places that connect you to the rural and urban communities that you love. That reminder is a remembrance of the many ways that we are all connected, and that is at the core of the work that we do at RUX. So welcome to RUX. We are so happy to have you. I'll share just a little bit about how we got here today. So the Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange was started 8 years ago as a partnership between Art of the Rural and Apple Shop. Today, we are a statewide network of strong personal relationships that bridge cultures, grow social capital, and unite diverse leaders towards common vision. At RUX, we envision a future in which Kentuckians value each other, create common ground, and understand our interdependence. From the beginning, we wanted to build an infrastructure that connected rural and urban Kentuckians in a way we had never experienced. We started RUX because while our strong regional identities are often a source of pride, the division and lack of collaboration across them has held Kentucky back. Our original RUX proposal pitched a series of exchange conferences across every Kentucky region. Oh, back to the other slide, Richard. We thought we could reach each region of the state and attract 150 members in the first 5 years. Now, as we launch our 7th cohort, more than 260 leaders from 49 counties have joined the RUX network. The places that you see here with stars are places we have been hosted. In 2022, we will host our 20th community intensive and our 11th host community. This year, RUX is hosted in Muhlenberg County, Louisville, and Estill County in Kentucky, as well as Monoman and the White Earth Reservation in St. Paul in Minnesota. So, how does RUX work? Each spring, we invite a peer review panel of alumni to select our incoming RUX cohort. Cohort members tend to be community leaders with diverse experiences of identity, upbringing, and perspective. RUX members and alumni are artists, educators, farmers, attorneys, factory workers, financial advisors, historians, doctors and nurses, herbalists, poets, small business owners, retirees, and much more. Once accepted, the cohort gathers at 6 community intensives over a 2-year period in at least 4 regions of the state. Together, they explore Kentucky or Minnesota, engage in nuanced conversations about what they've seen and heard, and through the process, foster productive relationships across difference, across sector, and across every region of the state. Connection really is at the center of RUX. It is our mission, it is our tool, it is our impact. Because we believe that true leadership is a process of deepening connections to others, and that vulnerability is the currency of connection. We bring people together to share experiences that will strengthen Kentucky from the ground up. We do that work together each weekend by committing to personal growth, investing in new relationships, seeding new projects, and telling our Kentucky stories. So with that, I'll hand things over to our co-hosts, Richard and Ivy.
Thanks so much, Savannah. I'm moving some pins around here, so I'm just gonna there we go. All right, we're all good. So thank you all so much for being here. We're so excited to have this opportunity to share a little bit more about the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange. And this webinar really is about impact and the impact that the Rural Urban Exchange has had both on the sort of personal lives and professional lives of each of the individuals that have participated, but also how those individual impacts and those personal professional impacts broaden out into a sort of a broader impact on our state and on our communities. As Savannah said, my name is Richard Young, and my dear friend and colleague, Ivy Brashear. Ivy, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Ivy and I were two co-authors of a series of case studies on the Rural Urban Exchange that were made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts a couple of years ago. And the title of those case studies are called Living with Complexity. And I think that's a really great grounding sort of thought for this conversation and how complex this work is. We'll have some more information on those case studies at the end. They're a riveting read, so I definitely think you should go download those, but don't go away from the webinar quite yet, and download them at the end. So at RUX, we talk about the currency of connection as the sort of framework for how, this is my dog in the background, unavoidable, sorry about that. The currency of connection is sort of the framework for the Rural Urban Exchange. And oh goodness. And that framework is really made up of sort of 3 parts, as people, place, and partnership. And we'll get into what those are in a second. But along with that framework of people, place, and partnership, there are also sort of these methodologies and principles and this ethos that we bring to the work. Oh goodness, dogs are barking. So for people, what we see is that the Rural Urban Exchange is most successful when members feel like they belong to a community and have experiences that take place in a heart space, in addition to the usual sort of headspace that we're in social and civic work, right? And in the ways that a lot of us spend most of our professional lives in this sort of headspace. When we bring people together through our community intensives or through other programming, we really encourage people to connect in a deeply personal way. This photo on here is a really great reminder for me of an amazing panel conversation that we had at one of our Rural Urban Exchange weekends about what national service meant and what it was like to be a veteran in our country. And this is just a really fantastic, it was a really fantastic conversation about community service and what that means. Place is also a significant part of our framework, one of the other 3 pieces. And our community intensive weekends are really about bringing people together in place, right? So we bring rural and urban people together in community settings that inspire them and also that activate them, that want to take action and sort of have reflection inside their communities. The weekends are really immersive and inclusive exploration of place. When we go to a place, we really go deep in that place, and we talk to a lot of people that have deep wealth of cultural knowledge about those places, and we really try and spend a lot of time learning very intentionally from each other. And this active exchange really helps us both learn about the place that we're in, but also helps us reflect upon the places that we come from, right, and the communities that we serve. And that to me is, I think, one of the most rewarding aspects of participation in the exchange, is that the self-reflection that I've been able to do in my work through place. And then lastly, partnership. And so, a lot of times when people think of partnership, they think about like a really specific tactical project. And while there's sort of time for that, right? There's time in our community intensives for exploring partnerships and sharing. The really amazing parts of RUX are what happen sort of between members inside and outside of those community intensive weekends, right? These opportunities for sort of these happenstance partnerships and relationships to build over time through routine connections to each other. I think, in addition to talking about our sort of currency of connection framework, right, this people, place, and partnership framework, I think it's really important to talk about the values that we come in to this work. And as with any ecosystem, we believe that Kentucky's strength is in its diversity. RUX understands that geography is not the only thing that divides us. We are an anti-racist organization, and we strive to create spaces that are safe, accessible, and welcoming to everyone. And we do this work in alignment with core values, which you can see here, of connection, openness, diversity, and inclusion, and supporting intentions of community, justice, trust, and belonging. We strive to be an open and compassionate space to meet, learn more about our state and each other, engage in respectful dialogue, and move forward together. By designing our programs to help members more deeply connect, we're building capacity for more engaged, meaningful interaction across difference. And that, I think, is one of the most important aspects of what Rural Urban Exchange does. Well, why? Because we know that our future as individuals, our future as a state, and our future as a society relies on leaders who value diverse people, cultures, and regions, and can build support across these diversities. We've talked a little bit about how RUX works already, but I think this is just a lovely framing image for just how RUX brings people together. And I think in a moment, you're gonna recognize some of the people on in that photo. So we're gonna sort of start by talking about how RUX builds connections for us individually. And we use a concept called a narrative stage, which is really just an opportunity for people to reflect without interruption and to tell a story about their experience. So I'm going to unshare the slide so we can see some of the beautiful, wonderful people that are involved in this program and have been involved in RUX before. Welcome, everyone. I think it'd be great if we could just do a quick round of introductions. If you want to just say who you are, what brought you to RUX, and we'll take it from there. I'll introduce you sort of one by one. Amelia, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Amelia Martens. I use she, her pronouns. I am in far Western Kentucky, which I described to some folks this weekend as the little part of Kentucky. And I was drawn into RUX because some really good people that I knew, Lanny Bryant from Paducah and Brett Eugene Ralph, who's another Kentucky writer, were like, hey, there's this amazing thing that's happening. You should get involved. And I just applied for it based on the fact that like cool people said it was a cool thing. And I will talk more about that later.
Awesome. Thanks, Amelia. Mitzi, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes. Hey, good afternoon. Good morning to everybody. Carmen Mitzi Sinnott, Eastern Kentucky, she, her pronouns. I'm actually not sure if it was who connected me to RUX, if it was Kentucky Foundation for Women had something on their newsletter, on their hot flashes, it might've been that. But for me, I was looking for a place, still searching for a place where I could feel more comfortable being back home. And so this was yet another attempt to find more people that valued being different. Thanks.
Awesome. Alexia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Alexia Ault. I'm in Harlan County, Kentucky. I work for Southeast Kentucky Community Technical College, and I first got looped into RUX through Savannah, who reached out to some of my colleagues and kind of shared the application with us. And that first year we became a host partner and hosted in our county.
Awesome. And Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Michael George. I am in Jefferson County, specifically Louisville. I work for the school board, so I am currently at summer school. So if you hear some craziness, that's what's going on. I was introduced project, and she told me that I need to join RUX because she thinks that I would be a good fit, and I'm still here. I think she was right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. So now we're going to ask each of you all to just share a brief story, 3 to 5 minutes, about how you built a connection, personal or professional, through RUX. And we'll go in that same order. Amelia, I'll keep a little timer, and we'll just ping you in the chat when it's been about 3 minutes, and so then you can know that it's getting to that time. Does that sound good?
That's perfect. Just hold up the sign. So I have a lot of stories, and I had to narrow it down when I was thinking in terms of connections that I have made, because there were people I met when I was in the cohort in 2016 that I still check in with, just to see, personally, like, how am I doing? How are you doing? Like, on that level. But as a teacher, I brought lots of RUX members in to speak to my students. But the connection I really want to talk about, so I was in the cohort in 2016, and I came home and I told my husband about it. I was like, look, this is the best thing that I have ever done. I feel so much better about humanity. I really need you to go and apply to this program. I need you to be involved with it, because I need to be deeply understood. And I was having these conversations, and I was like, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand how important this is. And he grew up in Paducah from like 6th grade on. So he was like more of a Kentuckian, and I'm a transplant. But I was like, you don't understand some things about Kentucky, and I have learned these things. So I need you to do this. So a couple of years later, he was in the cohort, and one of the people that he met was a poet. And her name's Sarah McCart Jackson. She is lovely. You should look up her work. But he came home and he was like, hey, there was another poet, because my husband's also a poet. He's like, there was another poet in my year. I was like, well, that's amazing. Who is it? Because the world of Kentucky poetry is not that big, but it was a person I didn't know. And she had a new book that was coming out, and we run the Rivertown reading series here in Paducah. So I was like, well, great, we can have, Sarah come and read for us. So she came to Paducah and she read at Bricolage and gave a great reading, but also like stayed with us. And she was comfortable to stay with us because, well, it was pre-pandemic, but also like she knew Britain and she was like, this is going to be great. So she was in our reading series. And then that's when I got to meet her. And she invited me to come and speak at the Kentucky State Poetry Society conference that was going to be in Lexington, to speak about the journal and to talk about my own writing. And I was like, well, this is wonderful. So I got to go to this conference because of this connection with Sarah and get to talk about the journal that we were running through West Kentucky Community and Technical College, and also, my own poetry. And then I realized, getting that chance to like be in the same room with Sarah and talk about writing, that we actually knew a lot of the same people. And one of her best friends was a poet that had come to read for our reading series before. Like there just started to be illuminated all of these connections that we had, and yet our circles had never crossed. And the poetry world in Kentucky is not that big. So it was kind of amazing that we just had not met. And so we developed a really close relationship, and so much so that like I send her work now and I'm like, what do you think about this? Is this ready to go into the world? And like when we're applying for grants, we do a little exchange, and it's like I just got this really close connection with another writer who's from a different part of Kentucky, who grew up in Kentucky. And she helped me do a lot of things. But one of the opportunities that came out of this is she was the president of the Kentucky State Poetry Society. And she was like, hey, we need a vice president. Do you want to do this? And I found a whole other organization and a whole other network of people to be involved with. And so now it's evolved where Sarah has moved on to be our media coordinator for KSPS. And I'm the president of the Kentucky State Poetry Society, which never would have happened had I not been in the Kentucky Roller Exchange, had my husband go through it, and met Sarah. So it just like one thing led to another, and my network just expanded in this really beautiful way, and it continues to do that. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that great story of connection, Amelia. Mitzi, would you like to share a story about how you built a connection, personal or professional, through RUX?
Yeah, I think I'll take y'all, to be quite honest. For me, the kind of connection I want to speak about, or I'm going to speak about, is I remember like the idea of traveling across the state through hills, worried about mold because I have severe mold allergies, and meeting new people, and already coming back home from New York City, like still not finding a place where I felt accepted, all parts of me. And one morning, or the first morning, we had some activity that we were at Western Kentucky University, and we had to walk all the way. I missed where we were gathering from the beginning. I don't know whose fault that was. I'll take some responsibility for that. But by the time I walked up to the place where it was, they had already started. Tried to look in the windows. No one was recognizing me. So it triggered a lot of shasha for me. And so I tried to calm myself down and go ahead and do some yoga over in the grass on the way back down. And by the time I got back down to the dormitory where we were, I was really upset. And what was really a turning point for me about how I would connect with people in RUX, the people that were there was like Izzy and Oka and maybe one or two other people, that they allowed space for my feelings to come out honestly, unabashedly, and they accepted me and listened to me and never negated that any part of what happened of not connecting in that activity was something wrong or my fault, or blaming anybody. And so for me, that was a moment where I felt like I could really begin to trust people in this organization, because a lot of the things that come up, especially when we're cross-connecting around class, around race, around gender, and going to some space we've never been to, that makes everybody puts everybody in such a vulnerable place. And to be able to be a container for those emotions, because y'all know all the things that we are going through as American citizens and the things that we have to evolve. We have to be able to hold space, be a container for the emotions that come up. I'm not saying be mean or antagonizing to other people. I'm saying hold a space for others to be emotionally honest. And so to me, that also takes, RUX has made, I've been part of the efforts in the past 2 years to really understand or begin to look at trauma, how we show up in our trauma. Our personalities are often configurations of all the experiences and traumas we have. So how does that crisscross when we come to a weekend cohort? So I really appreciated that. All those people who let me vent that day, and I saw others I know throughout the time I've been with them. Most people are really not afraid and willing to hold that space. I timed myself. Sorry, I didn't mean for it to be loud. But most people in RUX are willing to hold that space. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was great timing yourself. It went off at the same time as mine. We almost had a little timer choir over here. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think, RUX is such an amazing, has that ability to like connect people, and people are just so empathetic and present for people in the exchange. That's one of the things I think we all value about it. Alexia, do you want to share a story?
Yeah. So my story is more about a professional connection that we made. And I say we because it was a connection for everyone in my office and for our whole community. I joined RUX in 2016. And as I said in my introduction, we were a host partner. So we hosted one of the community intensives that first year, which was a major learning curve. But right off the bat, that first year, some of my coworkers and friends started making connections with people from other communities. So my coworker, and at that time boss, Robert, met some people from Covington who worked for a graphic design firm and the Center for Great Neighborhoods. He really got along well with them, and met an architect through that group too. And they started developing this connection. We were starting to get interested with working on downtown development and creative placemaking in downtown Harlan. And Robert was writing some grants to do some downtown development work. He used those contacts that he got from RUX to not only write those grants, but to bring those RUX members to Harlan. And in 2017, they hosted what they called a community engagement project, really unique, original name. But they gathered, I think, almost 200 oral histories about what local leaders wanted to see happen in Harlan and in Cumberland, which is another city in Harlan County. They brought in people from the Center of Great Neighborhoods, from BLDG, and from Hub and Weber to look at creating some sort of downtown development and creative placemaking work to foster downtown development and sorry, he wants to talk too. And focus on creating a catalyst for downtown development in Harlan on one block. So we focused on Central Street in downtown Harlan. And a lot of those oral histories really focused on what we wanted to see happen with local businesses that we wanted to see in the community, public art that we wanted to see in the community. And at that point, there wasn't a whole lot happening on that street. But since 2017, my job was created, the project that I work for, to create trainings for people to do downtown development work and construction work. We have, we've seen some businesses open up. In that one block, there are 3 lawyers' offices. 2 of them have fixed up their facades of their buildings. There was 2 existing businesses on that block. One closed, the other one is still open, and their building has been purchased recently, and they're looking at starting new businesses in that building. A medical practice is has purchased a building and is currently developing it. A brewery is currently being developed and is about to open, I think, any day now. And 3 other buildings are currently in the process of being revitalized on that block. So we've really seen a lot of the ideas and dreams for our community starting. It's taken a little while. 5 years later, we're seeing what our community members envisioned in 2017. And that's a result of these connections that we made in RUX. So.
Thank you so much for that story, Alexia. It's I think one of the, it's just such a great success story of connections built through RUX. Speaking of connections, I'm sorry that you all are being connected to my dog Oliver at the moment. Michael, would you like to tell a story about a connection that you made through RUX?
So my story is more professional as well, and I guess personal too, because there was some growth, I guess. So I worked for the school board, and I ran a after-school program for 13 years, and kids would come to my program after school, and we did a lot of different activities. One in particular was an activity called aquaponics, and there is a statewide competition for different projects called the Student Technology Leadership Program, and we entered into this competition, and part of the competition was to make a connection with another program or school across the state. And so when I went to RUX, not knowing what I was getting myself into, I was told it was a bunch of hippies that sat around the fire singing, and I was told that I belonged there, and I still didn't know. I might be a hippie, but I don't sing. But anyways, I went to the Rural Urban Exchange, and in my home group, which was led by Richard, who's on. I met a person from Harlan County or Kentucky, and I told them my story about needing some connections with a school, and one of my homeroom colleagues said, "No, a teacher that would love to have y'all, collaborate." So I got the name of the teacher, and I told my knuckleheads that we are going to Hazard, Kentucky, which was new to me, as new to them. No, I don't know if it's stopped. It says it stopped. I'm gonna keep going. I don't know what's going on, but anyways, so we went to. I told my kids that we were going to Hazard, Kentucky, which I did not go. I've never been, and they've never been, so it was a scary situation. It was 3 hours on a school bus, and luckily, my school was a youth performing arts school, and so they did Hamilton all the way down. So I learned about Hamilton. I know all the songs, never seen it myself. So that was something interesting. But when we got to Hazard, we were greeted by basically the whole school. We were just trying to collaborate with one group or one classroom. That happened, and it was so impactful. My students, they're pretty much grown now, but they that's all they talked about for the next year and a half that they were there. And even when I see them out, we still talk about going to Hazard and connecting with that classroom. The news came to see us, and it was just a very great experience for us all to actually get out of Louisville. A lot of the kids that I deal with don't have opportunities to travel around our state. And even for me, I really haven't been around the state as much as I need to. And so, yeah, that was the biggest impact that we had.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that story, Michael.
Sorry to jump in, but Michael, you all, I don't know if this came through, but you all also set up a hydroponics system or aquaponics system for that school, right?
Yeah, we actually, it's not as big as you think, but we have like this, we had a traveling system which consisted of a fish tank and some other things that I don't want to bore you with, but we brought all the pieces that we needed, and they provided the fish, and we set it up for them. And I know that they kept it going at least a year after, but then we kind of fell off, and I haven't tried to check in on it, but that was something new for them. And we were on the news and about it, talking about it and everything, and it's pretty cool.
That's great, Michael. Yeah, what an amazing outcome and connection from all of y'all. So I'm gonna turn it over to my dear friend Ivy over here for a moment to sort of talk about how about how this currency of connection framework sort of weaves in. She's going to lead a brief discussion. So Ivy, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, so like Richard said, we're just going to have like an open discussion for a second about this currency of connection framework. And I have a couple of guiding questions for our group. So just the first question to start us off, why do y'all think this framework helps build attachment and connection? And then have you seen that why of how it builds connection? Have you seen that playing out during the weekends, the community intensive weekends that y'all have been a part of? And I'll just open it for anyone who feels called to speak to this.
Hey, Carmen, Mitzi here. I was a little hesitant at first to think that the connections would actually grow, because although it felt a little initially like, summer camp for adults, and what could actually be I mean, of course I had joy in there and it was nice to travel, but I was like, so what does this do to help all the problems of the world, or of Kentucky or whatever? But I think it's such a critical piece of the solving and moving forward and shifting culture over time. It takes time. You can certainly, I think people have shared stories about how the work came together. And so there were definite objectives to achieve amongst the connections that happened. But I think what people who are considering taking on an initiative like this may also be very, we're all working in this very product oriented culture. So the product is going to look like it's growing slowly. But I think in the end, it really does. You turn around after being part of it, you're like, holy crap, look at that whole network quilt that's been made organically over time, so that people, when they do reach out for work or connections, it's a real trust that has been established.
Great, thank you.
Ivy, can I answer this too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I think just in having had the Muhlenberg County weekend last weekend, I got to watch this happen like in real time, where I could see people come together who had a chance to like step out of their everyday lives and, you know, all of the things that we have to take care of every day, and engage in like really deep conversations where everything like just paused for a second, and they like had a chance to like breathe and to like use some of the curriculum to reflect in a way that like maybe during their everyday, you know, existence, where they're just like trying to make it through the day, which is like what I'm normally trying to do, is like just make it through the day. Like they had a chance to like stop for a second and sit with other people that were deeply listening to them. And I think that allows for a transformation in the idea and the evolution of what could be, and the openness to like connect with other people about it. So that was one part of it. But also like these weekends provide a chance for people to be in a physical space with people. I don't know when else they would maybe be in a room together. Like what other environment like this level of diversity across all aspects of being would put people in a room together. And so I watched people who were, you know, interested in one thing, see the connection between their focus with somebody else who was coming at that idea from a totally different sector. And you could just watch like bridges be built. It was really magical.
Yeah, I think I hear that word used a lot to describe RUX, that it's a magical experience. And I think you explained why very perfectly. Thank you. Michael or Alexia, y'all have anything you want to add to this?
I think it's kind of natural too, because when you get so many people in a room that are so passionate about their place and about what they do, it's kind of natural for people to just be like, well, have you ever thought about doing it this way? Or here's what we do. Let me help you figure this out. And the other thing that I would say is that, you know, we're doing all of this work about intentionally creating connections and visiting all of these spaces to understand this community better and these projects better. But there's also this downtime built into RUX so that people can make personal connections, not just the professional ones. And I think we see a lot of really unique connections come out of that downtime.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's a really important part of it as well, that we're allowing folks to just connect on that human level instead of, you know, just to like think about your work or think about your community or the work that you're doing there. That's also one of the more magical spaces of RUX, to use a hashtag word, I guess.
I think sometimes the experiencing these weekends, you get to see how willing and open people are to helping your cause or your project. We do something called Abundant Futures, which really sets the tone for that. And it does become magical because you, as the person that has the project or looking for the help, you have to actually expand your own project, and for some reason you it makes you think about it, and narrow down what you need to talk about or what you need help with. And the people that are your colleagues or whatever, they are so willing to help, even continue thinking about your project even after the weekends. And I know for myself, I'm still thinking about the people from Muhlenberg, and I can't wait to see what progress people have made on the next weekend. So it is sort of magical.
I've seen these RUX weekends kind of continue in completely un-RUX spaces too. We made these connections. I don't remember what year it was. And I'm sorry for continuing to say connections. My thesaurus is not working real well. But we met some leaders from Estill County, and then months later attended the Brashear Fork Institute in Berea. And just naturally, I saw people from Estill County and people from Harlan County who'd met during RUX create and build these other projects together and support each other's work. It's like people just couldn't help but continue to create once they'd made these friendships and partnerships.
Yeah, that's really another good point to bring up, that these connections continue after the weekend, that it doesn't just stop there. And we've seen that over the years that RUX has been in existence, that just continues to happen. And it's a really beautiful thing to see, for sure. Well, thank you all for this conversation. I'm gonna turn it back over to Richard, and he's gonna lead us through another section here.
Awesome. Thanks, Ivy, and thanks to all of y'all for sharing your thoughts. I missed the most recent RUX weekend, and just hearing y'all talk about it made me so sad that I missed it. Yeah, I just sort of like, it's like, oh wow, yeah, I really wasn't there. Dang it. Anyhow, and yeah, and to echo the friends' comments, some of my very best friends in the world I've made through RUX, and people that I see very regularly. Great. So we're going to do another one of these narrative stages. So I'm going to ask y'all to share one more story. And the story that we'd like for you to share is about really like the impact that RUX has had on your life, right? Like, how has it impacted you personally or professionally, outside of any individual connections, outside of all of that, right? How does all of that aggregate up to make this personal or professional impact on you as a human being? I know it certainly has for me. So I'm excited to hear how it has for y'all. Amelia, would you like to go first?
Sure. So this is going to be really hard to do in 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to try. There's so many things to talk about. But one, I was thinking back about how I was feeling in 2016 when I was in the cohort, and some things that I'm remembering are just the sort of lack of community that I was feeling, and the lack of relationship to my place. I moved to Paducah in 2007, and I'm not from Kentucky, and really, like, it took me a long time to feel like part of this place. And I had been in Indiana before that, and I'd been in California, but I was born in Washington. So I really had, like, my whole life a feeling of not belonging to a place. And so I was feeling that, like, and part of that, but also, like, my kids were 3 and 5, and I was very much like in a small, sort of isolated world of like these little kids, and how that like sort of cuts you off from people. And one of the things that attracted me to the Rural Urban Exchange was that it was going to be in Paducah. And I was like, okay, well, I could do that because it's going to be in my place. And I didn't realize, I'd been here since 2007. This is 2016. I didn't realize all of the things that I didn't know about my own town. And I didn't know about the other people that were in my town. I met people that live in my town that I had never met in, all those years. And I went to places that I had never been. So I learned so much about my space, but also when we went to Harlan County, we had this small group conversation where it was talking about like how you see yourself as a Kentuckian. Like in that moment with these people from all across the state, I realized that I do see myself as a Kentuckian, and that I am part of this state, and this state does have enough room for me, and whatever I want to bring to it and share with it, there's a place for me to do that. So it was just like an overall feeling of like, I belong here. I can contribute here. I have a community here, and I have a community, you know, in Paducah, but I have a community that's like connected to my region. But now I have like a community that's connected across the state. And it was like this moment where everything like came into focus, and I was like, I belong and I'm connected, and there are people for me. And like coming out of being like a new mom and like, you know, not being in grad school anymore, where you really have this little nice community, like all of a sudden I was like a grown-up with a grown-up community that was like diverse and complex and had space for me and was welcoming to me. And it was just a feeling of like intense belonging that I've never felt before.
You said you couldn't do it in 3 to 5 minutes. You did it in exactly 3 minutes. That's impressive, Amelia. Yeah, I feel like we're all so yearning for connections and so yearning for place and like this feeling of belonging somewhere. And how RUX like sort of molds that and builds that for people is just like one of the most magical, use that word again, magical experiences possible. Mitzi, do you wanna talk about?
Yeah, so in that vein of belonging, as a person of color, a person of mixed race identity, again, I left Eastern Kentucky, the Ohio River Valley, because I didn't feel like I belonged, because of our history of ignoring, sidelining, in a violent way, people of color, and not acknowledging all the incredible contributions that have made Louisville the city that it is, you know, Greenup County what it is. So when I came to RUX and y'all started with that land acknowledgement, really, I came with a little bit of edge and attitude. Like I wanted to be there, but I was like, this is going to be the same old shit that we always deal with white people. They're going to be hippies and think they're all cool, and they're really not be doing the work. And then when y'all started with the land acknowledgement, I kind of woke up like, what did I just hear? And then when we went to Lexington, and then you guys take us all through Cheapside and all these other places, even more so than some Black folks who are born and raised in Lexington don't know about, or the politics or the redlining in certain cities and how it actually played out. And I was like, oh my goodness, these people are for real. They're legit. And they're really committed to equity. So in your curriculum planning for those who are considering the cohort as white Americans, to make this effort is really part of the culture, the society we want to build. And I feel like you all at RUX have been consistent with that, sharing power and leadership. That is critical. It takes time. Like some of the times that we have decisions to be made about whatever we might be doing, like it takes forever. And even my Aries self was like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, are we going to get to this or not? But in the end, it builds for everyone feeling that they belong. And so in my work environment as a consultant, DEI equity consultant now, working with like 7 organizations from Louisville to Lex and Pikeville, I now feel especially comfortable, but also point out some of the things that I didn't know that you all shared in these excursions. So it's pretty, again, it created a sense of belonging I already knew, but to have others of the dominant culture acknowledge that is critical for all of us moving forward together in a safe way.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Mitzi. I think that's it's grounding equity issues and specifically talking about the like real stories of place, right? The really complicated, hard stories of place is really important to RUX. So thank you so much for lifting that up and how that's sort of impacted you. Alexia, would you like to share a story?
Yeah, this is the story that I thought I would share. We kind of did some planning several days ago, and I was totally thinking about something completely different, but you know, stuff happens. But as I said earlier, I first started RUX in 2016. And in 2017, I had started thinking about maybe looking into foster care. And I met someone through RUX. Several people were like, oh my gosh, you have to meet Tanya. And I met Tanya and her husband and their, at that point, foster child. And was able to just kind of be like, okay, tell me about this. What happens when X? Made that connection. And we started a group chat with another foster parent from a neighboring county to me. And we continue to share, troubles that we're going through, ask questions about things that we are dealing with, celebrate each other's adoptions, each other's, help each other through each other's grief, all sorts of different things that happen. So the major thing that happened between our meeting to plan this webinar and today is that I got a new placement. So that's why you just see a blanket. Unfortunately, you don't get to see this peanut, but it's really cute. So use your imagination. But one of the people on that group chat came over to help me on Saturday. And she said, I saw Tanya today, and she told me, I need you to go see our girl. And she's not going to tell us what she needs, but you need to take care of her. So they did. They brought over bags and bags of groceries and meals and things, one of which I grabbed as I ran out of the house today. So it's had a major impact on my life. When I went to pick up this little critter, I went to a hospital that I didn't really know well. And I was able to reach out to another RUX member who'd had children at that hospital and say, where am I going? What do I need to do before we're able to leave? And she not only gave me information on what it was like and when her children were there, but also said, do you need anything? I've got an hour, I can run anything up to you that you need. So I feel like after doing RUX, I could go anywhere in the state and be like, I need help with this. Can somebody come help me? And they will. I had another placement that I got while we were in Muhlenberg County, and I was very close to driving across Kentucky to pick them up in the middle of that exchange weekend, and was planning to just bring them back to Muhlenberg County with me. And I knew that if I did that, I could call on any of the other RUX members and say, hey, can somebody find me a stroller and a bassinet while I'm here? And I knew that it would happen. That didn't end up needing to happen, but I knew that the people in this group could do it. We could handle that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that very personal story, Alexia. So having that network of people across the state that you can go to for help, or even just for like a conversation and like mutual solidarity is so important and so critical to RUX. So thank you for sharing that. Michael, would you like to share a story?
So my story is it is still in going on, so it's concurrent. I am a steering committee member, and just watching the new cohort go through the same thing that I went through. I also have people that I brought or roped in that are experiencing the cohort currently. My leadership and confidence levels have become greater. My confidence in my ability to lead home groups and to ask to speak up when there needs to be some change in the organization itself, there has been a big difference and a big change since my cohort in 2018 or 2019. I've seen the difference, and I think that the RUX experience has given me the confidence to speak up and sit back and deal with it. And I appreciate the reception that some of the members or the organization in general has received some of the ideas and has received my leadership and my confidence. So I guess it wasn't really a story, but that is the impact that I professionally and personally feel from my experience at RUX.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, for that story. I'm gonna actually turn it over to Ivy again for a brief conversation. But I just wanted to sort of echo the fact that it's been so inspiring to see how much this program's grown and changed. Ivy and I have been around for a long time, and the program now versus what's almost seems like 10 years ago. It's really remarkable, and that the willingness to adapt and change and grow, I think, is so core to what RUX is trying to instill in others, and that it instills that in itself too is really wonderful to see. So anyhow, with that, Ivy, passing the baton to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just, this next open conversation we're going to have is really about the impact of RUX and how we measure that impact. And I think we've heard lots of stories already about that impact and what that has meant for people on a personal and a professional level. And I think, as Richard was saying, we have been around for a long time in this program. And, I think we always felt like there would be an impact from this work that we were doing, and we would see that impact. But I think it became clear to us a few years ago that, we needed a way to really capture that and measure that impact and make sure that we were able to say to people, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing. These are the connections that people make, but this is how this is really having an impact, not just in people's personal lives and on a small scale, but actually on a larger scale across the state. So I really just want to open it up just for anybody to talk about, how are the ways that we're measuring that impact, and whether it be, some of these stories about the things that are happening within communities or the personal impacts. Richard and Savannah too, I want to open this up to y'all too as well, to really talk about how we're capturing that and how we're talking about that. One way that Richard mentioned at the top of this call that we have measured that impact is through our case studies that were published last year or the year before, I can't quite remember, but very recently. So does anyone else just want to talk about some of those ways that we're measuring that impact?
I think one way that one way that we can measure it is the fact that now when I go into different communities, especially the ones I haven't been into in Kentucky, I want to know more about their story, and that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, because I know that we have some dark history, and but we also have some light, and I find myself, whatever community we go to, I want to know all the story about why is that community there, and I say that I have been to Knott County maybe 3 times, and and going there 3 times to now it becoming one of my favorite places in Kentucky. It's just, that's impactful. It's an impactful statement for me, because I really I wasn't into Kentucky, and I can say with confidence that that has changed.
I wonder, when you talk about measuring, are you all using, like, the rubric work I've been doing with Artists Thrive is about placing what matters to you on the rubric. And so that as long as we create programming that is impactful, and we know it because people kept showing up, funders will accept that we set measures and what matters, and then we show them this is how we measure.
I like that optimism. I don't know that they're all there yet as funders, but we are lucky to work with some who are and have been early adopters to this framework that is unconventional, right? It is just unconventional to say that deep connection that is personal, that builds trust, that builds belonging, that helps people stay in place, that cultivates leadership and sense of self and pride of place, that if that is the only thing that happens, is a heck of a lot, and that is worth every penny. And every project that happens as a result of that, every like article that is published, every network that is built, that is bonus, right? For a funder to accept that alone has been a challenge sometimes, because folks want to see really hard deliverables. And so we've had to meet in the middle a little bit. You know, we have learned that those things that I described, those connective pieces, that individual transformation, that sense of efficacy, those are the important impacts to us, but we've had to be really creative in how we can begin to measure those. And I am excited that with the leadership on the screen and many other folks around the state who are part of the steering committee and host committees and state partners, local partners, a whole web of folks that think with us, we've found more effective ways to try and measure more quantitatively that impact. And so what we've come up with over the years is a really broad evaluation system. So we evaluate every time our steering committee meets, we evaluate at the end of the weekend. The way that we've started to do that is to look at our values and supporting intentions, to look at every piece of our agenda, and to measure how we are living those values and supporting intentions throughout that agenda and throughout our conversation, so that we can look back and say, okay, we are in line with our mission and our values, or we are not, and we can course correct in real time. We also ask our cohort to do that after every weekend. We try and work with our cohort in several different ways to gather their feedback. And we're really committed as a leadership team to being responsive to that feedback. So there is a physical comment box during the weekends. There is a virtual open comment box. They complete an entry survey when they come in that helps us measure things like, these are the desired impacts of the program. How are you feeling about your connection to Kentucky now? How connected do you feel in your region now? Do you feel like a leader in the state right now, et cetera? How, your sector, on and on. We list every person in the program and say, do you know this person at all? Do you know them a little bit, but not really? Do you know them super well? So we can measure those connections that form throughout the process. And then at the end of each weekend, we also do a pretty comprehensive evaluation on, each piece of the weekend's programming, those place-based experiences, our own curriculum, the informal time, the lodging, the accommodations, whether or not they felt they were really catered to in terms of what they needed to thrive in the environment, and how well we lived our values. So there are so many different ways for our cohort and our host communities to give us feedback. We also do a sort of open forum at the end where there's like a live feedback session where we can have a broader conversation that I've found to be really generative, because that's where really complex things come up. It's the third weekend of the year. People feel comfortable, challenging the program a little bit. And then we get to take that messiness back with us as a leadership team and address it bit by bit. And we have that whole period of the winter and spring to remake RUX into something that grows along with the needs of Kentuckians. So those are just a few ways. We also have an expansion team that help to provide technical assistance and learning exchange with our team in Minnesota. To do that, they had to go through and look at everything we've ever done and articulate it. That's what you'll find in the case studies and handbook. And we host, forums like this, where folks get to say what really matters to them. And I think that's really important too, to be not only willing to share this program model openly with folks from around the country, but also to make sure that we're doing that from a lot of different perspectives where folks other than the staff members get to share their experiences. So that was a lot. I'll stop. And there are a lot of you who've worked on evaluations and parts of how we do that, how we measure our impact, and could maybe say it in a different way.
Just to speak to one small part of this, this year we did have a really in-depth conversation with the Kentucky Foundation for Women when we were looking at revising our application process, and that turned out to be really rich in terms of the evolution of our rubric that we used to look at applicants. And so it's maybe not a way of like measuring it, but a way of like measuring who is coming into the program and making sure that our values and our supporting intentions are showing up in the people that have access and are participating in this program. So it's another tool that evolved, but I feel like we could see the impact of that in the discussions we had on that application review team. And one of the really nice parts of that is that we did have steering committee members on that. We had RUX alumni on that, and we had a member from the Minnesota RUX team on that application review team. So it just felt like a really rich experience in terms of going in depth into the applicants and being able to measure, like, these are the things that are important to us. Here are the applications. Like, are we doing what we say we're doing? Are we being as open and honest with who is part of this cohort as we want to be? So it was a way for us to measure ourselves.
I think like one of the things that I've really noticed, I've been a part of the sort of teenage years of a number of organizations, right? That's sort of like where people are trying to figure things out a little bit. And, the beautiful thing about like young organizations is their sort of emergent nature and that they're figuring things out, and like, but that it sort of starts with this like wide-eyed, like, oh, what are all of the things we could do? And it starts with them from this like place of joy and excitement. And then I feel like what I've experienced happen with other organizations, right, is like as you start to get more rigor and methodology into the process, especially on the evaluation framework, that youthful wide-eyed optimism starts to turn into not that, right? And like that sort of sense of joy and excitement dissipates into something and makes, I don't know, the work not feel special in the same way. And I think one of the interesting things that I've noticed is that has not happened as much for RUX, because there's this constant sort of ebb and flow of people in the organization, right? There are people sort of coming in and leaving through the steering committee, through the cohorts. And because of that sort of constantly refreshed nature, there aren't a whole lot of people that are there for a very long time, present company excluded, that, that can maybe get like, like this is a lot of sort of methodology, and it sort of complicates this very free and open process. And so that's been like, it's really wonderful to hear the sort of excitement that still is in people's voices on this call, and people's enthusiasm, and just hearing from the folks that attended this weekend, or from Lexington. I've heard from a lot of them just about how special and wonderful that time was. And so knowing that RUX has been able to apply these like clear methodologies and these clear evaluation practices, and still deliver the same experience that is like joy inducing and magical, I think is really, really notable and very, very rare. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for adding that. And thank you everyone for what you had to say. Now I think we're gonna have a little bit of time for questions. And I'll turn it back over to you, Richard, so you can sort of guide that
Sure.
conversation.
Thank you, Ivy. And thanks everyone for sharing in that conversation. It feels really weird to thank you all, considering I was the last person to talk. So I feel like I'm thanking myself, which is a little weird. So anyways, yeah, so we just want to have a time for open questions and answers. I know, you know, there are a couple folks that are still here. A number of people had to step off. But if anyone has any questions or comments, I know we're seeing a couple comments coming through in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, we'd be willing to answer those. And then also, I think we have some questions, some surprise questions for our guests here. Not too much of a surprise, don't worry. Hi, Angela, I think you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to ask a question? All right. Well, I have a question for.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Savannah, go ahead.
I'm just curious from your all's perspectives, and maybe this is a question less for Richard and Ivy since they were sort of involved in this process, but from the rest of your perspectives, you know, we have a new RUX state. Minnesota has, I think, as of last night, gone through their cohort selection process. They'll have their first RUX weekend in August. What do you all think the potential of this work is in other states? And what do you hope, what from your experience do you most hope they get to keep and they get to have as well?
I'm excited for Minnesota. I have been to Minneapolis about 3 times in the past 4 years, and really saw a lot of creativity and ideas emerging in ways that seem more grassroots and more considerate of the environment than I've seen in other cities in America. So, and also seeing a lot more Indigenous folk than I've ever seen in America. And so I love going and having Indigenous women look at my face and go, oh, you know, so I'm excited that I think, you know, even just thinking about so many Indigenous people being there, that because we don't have that here. And I just can't even imagine the healing and the beauty that's going to emerge from that, because they already have such creativity emerging, plus the issues of Indigenous people, as well as Black Americans and any other marginalized groups. So I feel like art, environment, and people will become really strong, and what they've already started. So I can't wait to see that. I'd love to be part of something and take another visit. I know Forecast Public Art really well in Minneapolis, and I'm like, hey, I'm due for a visit in Minneapolis soon. So anyway, I'm excited for them. I also think I'm being asked to do some stuff in West Virginia in a city, not for the whole state, but I was like, dang, this is really what this particular group is asking me to do. They need to go around their own town and have these RUX immersions at each time they gather, and choose the place in the town and do this work. So there you have it.
Anyone else? Thoughts on Minnesota? All right, well, I have a question. And this is gonna be actually a question for Alexia. So giving you a heads up. Alexia, you know, you've been around this program just as much as Ivy or I. And, since we're on this side of the conversation, I'd be curious to get your opinion on how you've seen RUX change throughout this sort of tenure of your time in and around the program.
I think it has changed a whole lot since the first time that I participated. I think the model when I first joined was that participants broke up into different groups based on their interest or their sphere that they worked in professionally. And then participants were asked to create some sort of project where they would work maybe throughout different professional spheres to address a community issue in one of their communities. That was hard my first year. I struggled with that and thinking like, okay, what do we address? What do we do? But the project on Central Street in Harlan came out of that prompt. And it's still creating ripples through all the work that I do. But I think every time I talk, I think also RUX has turned into more of an opportunity still for community development, but also for professional development, for participants to think of, okay, what are my priorities professionally and personally, and how do I use this experience to kind of grow professionally or personally? So I don't know if that answered all of your questions. I think that's the biggest change that I've seen.
No, I think that was great. Yeah, and I would just echo all of those. We have about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to just leave space for one more quick question, and then we just have a couple little housekeeping things to do at the end here. So if anyone has a question for anyone, now is your time to ask it of each other. Anyone? All right, I'm going to ask one more very quick question. Amelia, question for you. You have taken on this much larger role in RUX. What's your favorite memory from this past weekend?
Oh gosh.
Or does it be favorite memory? What is that a memory that you're carrying with you?
So
your
I
role?
oh, there's so many. Yeah, I think just first to say that I've taken on a larger role because of the intense experience that I had in the cohort, and the lasting attraction to be part of this joy yeah, so there's that. But I think this last weekend, I had that initial anxiety of doing in-person work in pandemic times of oh my gosh, I'm going to show up and there's going to be the steering committee and then 9 people. No one is going to come to this. Just last minute, that last minute fear of oh, it's an in-person thing and no one will be there. And this happens to poetry readings all the time, where you show up, with your people, and then that is the audience. There's nobody there. So I was oh, nobody's going to be here. And getting to be at the registration table and have people open the door and come in. And these are people that I have, just read about in the application process and had never seen in person, have them come in. And that initial, being part of that initial experience where I got to watch people meet each other, and they were just so full of joy to connect and to be there, and to, even though they maybe they had a pretty good idea of what the thing was because we did an orientation. So I felt they showed up a little bit more prepared than maybe they had been in the past. But you could tell that they were just excited, and they were excited to be together. And it was just so powerful for me to see them, and then get to watch them over to the side, start to talk to each other. And thinking about, because I had looked at all their applications, thinking about all the people that needed to talk to each other and all the ways that they were going to get to connect, and just being part of like the very beginning of that happening, it was really wonderful and just like sort of emotional too, because people haven't been able to connect in a place together. So to see that happening like in the same room, it was just really wonderful.
That's great. That does sound like a very special memory. I hope you carry that joy with you. All right. So a couple little housekeeping things. One, I'm going to do a very brief screen share. There are two wonderful documents for you to examine on your personal time if you want to learn more about RUX. The first one, Living with Complexity, the case studies that Ivy and I co-wrote with the help of many people, too many people to mention. And then also the Rural Urban Exchange Handbook, which is really a sort of orientation and guide how we do our work here. You can get both of those at KentuckyRux.org, website down there. And then I do want to turn it over to Savannah for one more second. I know that you have something that you would like to announce, and then also maybe a little fond farewell would be in order. So Savannah.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for showing up today, for sharing your stories. It all made me cry. I had to go off screen. Just really powerful to hear from all of you, and such a blessing to have done this work with you for so long. I would like to share that if you're interested in being a part of the Rural Urban Exchange here in Kentucky, you should contact Amelia Martens at KentuckyRux@gmail.com. If you're interested in learning more about RUX in Minnesota, you should visit mnrux.org. And if you're interested in bringing the Rural Urban Exchange to your own state, you can contact me at savannah@artoftherural.org. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can begin. I also want to share with you that we'll have another one of these knowledge building webinars on June 30th from 1 to 2:30 Eastern, 12 to 1:30 Central. That will be focused on the Minnesota Rural Urban Exchange's launch, and that will include Anna Clausen from Minneapolis, Kathy Machapaw from St. Paul, Joe Allen from Monoman and the White Earth Reservation, Salma Ahmed Ibrahim, who is coming to you from Hibbing, and Cheryl Lee Hills from Staples, Minnesota. So please join us on June 30th from 1 to 2:30 Eastern to hear all about this program's launch in another state. And please get in touch if you'd like to work together. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Have a great afternoon.